They said family is everything, but sometimes family can feel like stranger. That morning, I reached to hold my grandson, and she stopped me. "Don't touch the baby," she said, sharp as winter air. The room fell silent. My son looked down, caught between us. I smiled calmly, though my heart raced. I had a suspicion, a quiet, burning question that needed answers. Could I trust what I had seen? Could I trust what they said? Sometimes the truth hides behind small words, and sometimes it screams in silence. That day, I decided silence wasn't enough. I would find the answer, and the answer would change everything. But before I continue, make sure you're subscribed to the Old Folks channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. We love to see how far our stories travel. Segment 2. The First Confrontation. Part 1. Verbal Clash. The morning turned to early afternoon, and the tension didn't lift. While I tried to chat lightly with my son, she hovered nearby, eyes sharp, lips pursed. Every question I asked about the baby's health or routines was met with a curt, "I've got it handled." Even small acts of kindness, offering to help with feeding or changing, were deflected, each refusal a subtle accusation of incompetence. I realized her hostility wasn't random. It had roots I didn't yet understand. My son sat quietly on the sofa, fidgeting with his hands, trapped between his mother and his wife. He opened his mouth, then closed it, unsure whose side he should take. It's fine," he muttered finally, barely audible, a half-hearted attempt to diffuse tension. His eyes avoided mine, flicking nervously to the baby's innocent face, the tiny fingers curling around the blanket. The room fell into strained silence, punctuated only by the baby's soft coos and the occasional creak of the floor. I noticed the subtle way she straightened her shoulders, a quiet declaration of dominance over the house. Something told me that this control wasn't just over the baby, but over the truth, a truth I was about to uncover. The thoughts settled like a shadow on my chest. Patience and careful observation would be my only weapons tonight. Could I wait long enough for the right moment? The sunlight filtered through the half-open blinds, casting long, uneven stripes across the polished wooden floor. I stepped inside, my coat brushing against the doormat, my heart tight with a mixture of anticipation and unease. The smell of fresh coffee and baby powder lingered in the air, almost masking the tension beneath the smiles and greetings. My son rushed to greet me, his warm hug a fleeting comfort against the icy stare of his wife. Something in her posture, the slight narrowing of her eyes, the cold tilt of her lips, warned me that today wouldn't be ordinary. Even the baby's soft coos seemed hesitant, as if sensing the subtle unease in the room. I knelt slightly to reach my grandson, my hand hovering, gentle and tentative. That's when she stepped in sharply, her shadow crossing over me. "Don't touch the baby," she said, her tone clipped, final, leaving no room for argument. The words landed like shards of glass, cutting the warmth in half. My son froze mid-step, eyes darting between us, caught between love for his child and loyalty to his wife. The faint ticking of the wall clock sounded deafening in the sudden silence. I realized then that today I would have to navigate not just family but secrets, pride, and possibly betrayal. I forced a soft smile, letting my hand retreat slowly, not with fear, but with patience. "Of course," I murmured, voice calm, but inside a storm brewed. Every detail in a room, the baby's crib, the carefully stacked toys, the family photos, seemed suddenly like clues in a puzzle I needed to solve. A quiet tension hung, thick like fog, making every heartbeat sound like a drumbeat. I sensed that what had started as a small confrontation would soon grow into something far larger. Could a simple DNA test reveal what words and smiles had hidden for years? The question lingered, almost tasting of thunder in the air. Later, while tidying the baby's room, I noticed small, odd details, bottles unopened, receipts tucked away, unfamiliar names and text messages on the kitchen counter. Each tiny clue whispered that something was hidden, that appearances were deceiving. My mind replayed all the moments I had brushed off, subtle dismissals, uncomfortable glances, odd excuses. I sat quietly in the rocking chair, watching my grandson sleep, thinking of my son's childhood. I remembered the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the moments I had spent guiding him. How could I protect him now when something seemed so off? My heart ached not just for my grandson but for my son, caught in a web of secrecy I didn't yet understand. A seed of resolve took root. If there was a truth hidden in shadows, I would find it. The only way to know for certain would be proof, unambiguous and undeniable. A DNA test, I realized, would bring clarity, and perhaps devastation. Could I confront the future with patience and courage? The question lingered, heavy and cold, like the calm before a storm. I spent hours weighing my options, sitting by the window as sunlight shifted across the floorboards. The baby's laughter drifted faintly from the other room, a fragile sound amid the tension. Should I confront directly? Or should I let a test speak for me? The thought of challenging her authority seared me, yet the urge to protect my grandson burned hotter. I quietly collected the necessary items, medical records, test kits, forms, each one a step toward uncovering the truth. Every detail mattered, every signature and sample had to be perfect. The stakes felt enormous, a mistake could shatter family bonds permanently. Late that evening, I held the sealed kit in my hands, feeling the weight of the upcoming confrontation. I realized patience and timing would be my allies, and that the moment of revelation could not be rushed. Could I remain calm long enough to see the truth unfold? The thought settled like frost, chilling but clarifying. The evening shadows stretched across the living room, curling around the furniture like silent spectators. I sat on the edge of the sofa, my hands folded neatly in my lap, watching her as she fussed over the baby. Every small gesture, the way she adjusted the blanket, the clipped way she spoke to my son, told a story of control, of hidden fears. Her eyes flicked toward me once, sharp and challenging, but I held my gaze, calm, letting her assume the upper hand. I noticed the baby's tiny fingers clutching the blanket, the soft rise and fall of his chest, innocent, unaware of the storm brewing in the adults around him. Every sound, the tick of the wall clock, the hum of the refrigerator, even the distant bark of a neighbor's dog, seemed amplified in the tense silence. Could she sense that I had already begun gathering the evidence that would change everything? I took a slow, deliberate breath, feeling the tension quell in my chest. My mind replayed every slight, every cold word, every moment that had hinted at distrust. Each memory sharpened my resolve, each tiny injustice burned like a hidden ember demanding attention. I whispered to myself, barely audible, not yet. Patience. Timing. My hand rested on the DNA test kit I had carefully concealed nearby, the weight of it heavy and purposeful. The plan wasn't just about proving the truth. It was about protecting the baby, and showing my son what loyalty and courage truly meant. Could I remain calm when the time came, or would her provocations ignite a confrontation before I was ready? Night fell, and the house seemed to exhale, the air thick with expectation. She laughed lightly at a joke my son told, tilting her head in a way that still suggested superiority. I sipped my tea slowly, keeping my expression neutral, letting the tension grow like fog around us. Every shadow on the wall seemed to lean toward me, every creak of the floorboards punctuating the quiet suspense. I knew the moment of revelation was close, and the truth hidden in the DNA test would soon cast a long, unshakable light. Would she be ready for the exposure of what she had tried so hard to hide? Or would the silence before the storm stretch on a little longer, heightening the dread for all of us? The room seemed to shrink around us, walls pressing closer as tension wrapped the air like thick fog. My son shifted uneasily in his chair, glancing between us as if waiting for the storm to break. She held the baby protectively, her grip tight, eyes sharp and daring. I said, "Don't touch him," she snapped, her voice slicing through the quiet like shattered glass. The baby stirred, sensing the tension, a soft whimper escaping his lips. I stayed calm, letting her anger roll over me like waves against a rock. Every muscle in my body was alert, but my voice remained steady. "I only want to help. He is my grandson too." The words hung in the room, fragile yet potent, and for a heartbeat, even she faltered. Her gaze narrowed, sharp as a knife, scanning my face for weakness. "Help? You think helping means overstepping?" she spat, her hands trembling slightly as she held the baby closer. The clock ticked loudly on the wall, each second punctuating the growing storm. I felt the weight of decades, my role as a mother, grandmother, protector, tighten around me. Silence enveloped the room for a second, thick and suffocating, until she broke it with another jab. "You don't belong in this house." My heart clenched, but my voice didn't waver. Perhaps not, I said quietly, letting the words float like a shadow over her pride, but neither do lies belong anywhere a child sleeps. Her breath hitched, and the tension stretched taut, ready to snap. I rose slowly, my movements deliberate, letting her see I was in control, even as my pulse raced beneath the surface. The baby cooed softly, unaware, innocent, a stark contrast to the storm around him. My son's hands fidgeted, knuckles white, caught in the crossfire between love and loyalty. I reached into my bag with measured precision, pulling out the DNA test, the evidence that would end the argument and expose the truth she fought so hard to hide. Her eyes widened as she noticed the paper, confusion and dread mingling in a fleeting expression before anger took over again. The room felt charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Could she maintain her composure when reality came crashing down in front of her eyes? The answer hovered in the thick air, waiting. The room felt frozen, like time had paused, holding its breath. I placed the envelope on the polished dining table with deliberate care, the soft tap echoing ominously against the walls. She leaned forward, her eyes narrowing, curiosity mixed with fear as she reached toward it. My hands remained steady, though my heart thudded like a drum in my chest. "Open it," I said softly, my voice calm but carrying the weight of inevitability. The baby gurgled, a small sound that contrasted sharply with the tension, highlighting the innocence caught between us. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the papers, her expression unreadable, but I could feel the first cracks forming in her confident facade. As her eyes scanned the results, the confident, defiant posture she had maintained so fiercely began to crumble. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint ticking of the wall clock and the baby's occasional coo. Her face went pale, color draining like water from a stone, and her lips parted slightly, as if the words she wanted to say were trapped. My son froze, his hands gripping the edge of his chair, the shock reflecting in his wide eyes. It can't be," she whispered, disbelief trembling in her voice. I didn't need to say a word, the truth had spoken louder than any argument ever could. The air had changed. What had been tension and hostility transformed into something heavier, a quiet reckoning. I leaned back slightly, still composed, letting the reality of the DNA test settle over the room like an unstoppable tide. The baby, oblivious to the adult conflict, snuggled against my arm, a living reminder of the truth. My son exhaled, relief and confusion mingling in his gaze as he finally looked at me, understanding at last. Her hands dropped to the table, useless, powerless, as the confrontation she had orchestrated dissolved into humiliation and awe. Could she ever look at me, or the baby, the same way again? The answer hovered silently, hanging in the thick, charged air. The room felt impossibly heavy, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Every glance, every small movement seemed amplified, charged with the weight of truth. My son's eyes flickered between me and his wife, disbelief and relief battling for dominance in his gaze. She sat frozen, fingers entwined, staring at the floor, the color gone from her face. The baby cooed softly, a small, innocent sound that contrasted sharply with the storm of emotions in the room. The air was thick with tension, and even the faint hum of the refrigerator seemed intrusive. For a long moment, no one spoke, the silence itself saying everything that words could never capture. She finally looked up, eyes wide, as if seeing the world differently for the first time. The defiance she had carried like armor had melted away, leaving only shame, guilt, and a hesitant fear. My son's wife seemed smaller somehow, diminished in her own presence, realizing that her attempts to control, to dictate, had been meaningless against the undeniable truth. I didn't know," she whispered, voice trembling, as if the words were barely hers to say. I stayed silent, letting the moment stretch, letting the weight of reality settle in like a slow, relentless tide. Power had shifted quietly, invisibly, and now the room recognized it. I took a deep breath, steadying myself as I cradled the baby a little closer, the warmth a calm anchor in the storm. My son reached for my hand, squeezing gently, gratitude and awe written clearly on his face. Around us, the room seemed frozen in a tableau of consequence and reflection, every lesson learned in silence, every truth absorbed without a single shout. She sat, humbled and shaken, the gravity of her words and actions finally landing. Could this moment heal the fractures, or had the damage already carved deep lines that might never fade? The answer lingered like a shadow, leading everyone to confront the choices that had brought them here. The room felt charged, like the calm just before a storm breaks. Every heartbeat seemed louder, echoing off the walls, mixing with the faint hum of the air conditioning and the soft coos of the baby. My son's wife sat stiffly, eyes darting nervously, realizing that the barrier she had built with anger and control was crumbling. I met her gaze calmly, my own expression serene yet unyielding. The air between us was taut, thick with anticipation, the kind of tension that can snap in an instant. Every inch of space seemed smaller, every shadow darker, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Could she face the truth now without trying to twist it? I spoke slowly, deliberately, letting every word carry weight. The baby you thought I couldn't touch is mine. By blood, and by right, I am part of this child's life. My son's wife froze, her lips parting slightly, a faint gasp escaping before she could stop it. The truth had landed, heavier than any accusation, louder than any argument. No amount of defensiveness, no attempt to belittle or control, could erase what had been revealed. I held the baby closer, not defiantly, but with quiet authority, letting my calm competence speak louder than words. Around us, silence reigned, the kind that can shatter pride and force reflection. For the first time, her eyes softened, flickering with guilt and the dawning understanding of her misjudgment. My son looked at me with a mixture of relief and admiration, realizing that I had protected not just the truth, but the child's right to love and family. She sat, humbled, the walls of arrogance and fear crumbling quietly around her. The baby's gentle movements seemed to punctuate the moment, reminding everyone of what truly mattered. Could this confrontation become the beginning of healing, or was the damage too deep to repair? The tension lingered, but now it carried a sense of inevitability. The truth had spoken, and there was no turning back. The room felt different now, lighter, yet heavy with the weight of what had just unfolded. My son's wife sat quietly, her gaze fixed on the baby in my arms, finally realizing that control and anger could not override the bonds of truth. I felt a strange calm settle over me, a mixture of relief and lingering sorrow for the tension that had existed so long. Every detail of the room, the soft glow from the lamp, the faint ticking of the clock, the baby's tiny fingers curling around mine, seemed to emphasize the fragile beauty of this moment. For the first time, I saw recognition in her eyes, the acknowledgement that what she had tried to deny was undeniable. Could respect truly begin here, in this fragile pause between anger and understanding? My son stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on his wife's shoulder, a silent gesture bridging the gap that had grown too wide. Tears glistened in her eyes, and though she said nothing, her body language spoke volumes, an apology, unspoken but sincere. I looked at my grandson, his innocence reflecting the possibility of a new beginning, and felt the tension dissolve slightly, like fog lifting from a quiet morning. Words were no longer necessary. The truth had already spoken, louder than any argument could. This was the moment when the past's bitterness could finally give way to understanding, when fractured relationships could begin the slow process of mending. But would it truly last, or was this fragile peace merely temporary? I placed the baby gently back in his mother's arms, letting her feel the warmth and trust that had been my quiet offering. My son smiled, gratitude shining in his eyes, and I realized that the family I had feared might be broken was, in some way, restored. The house, once heavy with tension and unspoken resentments, now felt alive with cautious hope. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the ordeal lift from my shoulders, replaced by a quiet pride in protecting the truth. And though scars would remain, and lessons had been harsh, a new chapter had begun, one built on honesty, courage, and the unbreakable bond between a grandparent and their grandchild. Could this fragile harmony grow stronger with time? Only the future would tell, but for now, the battle was over, and peace had finally settled in the room. Some truths cannot be ignored. They sit in silence, waiting to be noticed, waiting to be acknowledged. That day, I didn't confront with anger, I confronted with proof. It wasn't revenge, it was clarity, love, and protection for the one I cherished most. Family can falter, pride can blind, but the truth has a voice that cannot be silenced. Holding my grandson, I felt a bond stronger than fear, stronger than words, stronger than time. Sometimes it takes patience and courage to unveil what has always been there. And when it finally emerges, it changes hearts, restores respect, and reminds us what truly matters. The past cannot be rewritten, but the present can teach a lesson the future will never forget. And that lesson is the quiet power of truth.